Heyo, OmniDogs and OmniKittens. It's OmniDog from OmniDog's Vault, and today we're going to be talking about 7 books that had tearjerker slash heartwarming moments in them. Emotional books, books that got me choked up, books that made me feel all the feels, as the youth of today says. These books all made an emotional impact on my life, and so um, we can thank Prez Vexter. Prez Vexter. He is a subscriber, and he asked what the taupe, I believe that's pronounced top, what the top emotional comics were that were tearjerker or heartwarming moments. So I thought I'd just make a video of the ones that affected me the most. Uh, there's a ton that I did not include. These were the ones that just came to mind. So obviously explore more on the internet and see if you can find out more than just what I say. I know I left off blankets. Oops. Because that's an emotional book that got me choked up. And I can't lay my hands on it right this second. But that's one that I forgot. So there's actually 8 books. But here's 7 that I'll show you. The first one, and I'm going to try and do this as spoiler free as I can, which is going to make me fumble around a little bit, but have a little patience and we'll get through it together. First one, Daytripper. This thing is full of emotional moments because it follows a man through his entire life in an interesting way. It doesn't go in chronological order, but it shows him at various stages in his life. And if you piece all the stories together, you come out with a life. But in every single chapter, this isn't a spoiler since it's what the book is based on, he dies. So he dies when he's 8 years old. He dies when he's 21. At the end of every single story, it's a very interesting way to tell the story. And it makes it emotional because in each story, he lives to the maximum or he just lives. And at the end, it says, at the age of so-and-so, not even the darkness of a blackout could stop him from shining. He was like a flame of joy flickering in the wind on a candle that burned too fast. No one expected the thunder that came to silence such beautiful lightning. And with light, the little miracle was gone. And that tells the story of when the man was a young boy. But it also has him dying at various other ages, 21, and 28 years ago, 21 years ago, and dying in various ways. He's a writer, so he's constantly writing through the book, and he lives a full life, but at every single chapter, he dies. And you realize that it's a bit of a metaphor for life, that you could die at any time, but he's in each of these chapters, he's kind of living a rich, full life in each of the chapters. So I'm sure there's books and treatises and everything written on Daytripper and how great it is, because it is really, and it's coming out in absolute form here soon. And I believe I will probably be upgrading. I'm not 100% sure. That probably contradicts what I just said on my upgrade video, but this is a book that not only has great art, but a very powerful, impactful set of stories in it. So this is an emotional, amazing book, Daytripper. Here's another emotional, amazing book. I have the hardbound edition, but it's easy to find in paperback or online digitally. I Killed Giants, and I can't. I don't want to spoil this book for you, but this girl is depicted as wearing bunny ears and carrying a hammer, a giant hammer, because she kills giants. That's what she says. She kills giants. And we come to the discovery that there are a lot of things going on in this little girl's life, and she's very sarcastic, always in trouble, but she's very well written by Joe Casey. She's got very snappy comebacks to all the questions that she gets asked by school psychologists and the teachers and stuff. the local bully, things like that. But as you can see here, there's also little elves that are helping her. And there are giants that appear. Are these real? Are they metaphors? What is going on here? Who are these giants that she's killing and why? That's really about all I can say about this book. It's in black and white, but it is really quite remarkable how it pulls the feelings out of you. You realize all kinds of emotions in this book. Pretty much all your emotions are going to be pulled out of you in this book, but it is brilliantly done. It is heartwarming, poignant, scary, fearful. It's everything that you want in a book, and I highly recommend it. The next book that pulled some emotions out of me is Sweet Tooth. This is book 3 of Jeff Lemire's, one of his most famous books. And there's a lot of emotional moments in this book, Sweet Tooth. And if you don't know the story of Sweet Tooth, there's been a plague that's happened, and some kind of plague, some kind of experimentation and or disease has created these hybrids of these kids that are hybrid human, hybrid animal. And there's a lot of prejudice against them. There's a war that's happening. There's all kinds of every man for himself type behavior at the end of, if it's not the end of times, it's a bit of a post-apocalyptic scenario. So this book is full of a lot of emotional moments, but none is more emotional than the very end of the book to me. That got me choked up. The very end of Sweet Tooth. As I said, there's 3 hardcovers. I imagine it's collected in trade paperback too. It's worth the investment to read about the relationship between Mr. Jeppards and Sweet Tooth. Mr. Jeppards on the back here. Let's see if I can find a picture of Mr. Jeppards. Yeah, Mr. Jeppards is chatting with another gentleman here. Mr. Jeppards has the white hair. He and Sweet Tooth are the main protagonists in the book, and they develop a relationship that's very heartwarming, and the end of Sweet Tooth is very touching and got me choked up. So this is a book that a lot of people can enjoy, and I certainly did, and I really, really enjoyed this book, and I think you will too, as far as something to get you choked up, because that's what we want in books, to get emotionally involved with the characters. And here's a character that I grew up with. This is the Silver Age Superman, written by Alan Moore and Kurt Swan. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow? This is the deluxe edition. I'm talking about the very first story where they send off the Silver Age Superman in order to bring him up to speed, bring him into modern times, bring him into the 80s. This was written in the mid-80s, early 80s to mid-80s. And so Alan Moore, of course, does a great, famous job wrapping everything up so that kind of a rebirth, a revamping of Superman can take his place starting in the mid-80s, and as they seem to cycle through new iterations of the heroes every 7 years or so. And Alan Moore, the whole book is, he's basically erasing the Silver Age from the pages as he goes along. So a lot of things disappear and or / die that I grew up with. So it was actually, I know it's only a comic book, but there was a lot of emotional moments in this book for me, and I'll spoil it for you if you don't want it spoiled. If you haven't read it yet, I'm going to raise my hand. When I put my hand down, the spoiler's over, and you can look at the screen again. This is when I'm spoiling it. Okay, ready? It's when Krypto gives his life to save Clark. Krypto gives his life and turns green. He absorbs the kryptonite that is going to kill Superman, and I got choked up at it. It really affected me. I found it to be a wonderfully written tribute and closure to all the Silver Age heroes. Okay, I'm done spoiling it. And it was a wonderful tribute to all these heroes, particularly, especially Superman, because it was sending him off. And whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow just has a very moving scene in it that definitely got me choked. Always gets me choked up every time I read it, and I love reading it. Here's another book I love reading. It's another Superman book, and that is All-Star Superman. This is, the whole thing's heartwarming and emotional for me. There's several moments in this book that I think qualify as not necessarily tearjerker, but they do qualify as heartwarming, and Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely do a great job of writing Superman, not as just the ultimate big Boy Scout, but as a person that is willing to sacrifice everything for what he loves. And the part that gets me choked up, besides the very end, and I won't spoil what happens if you haven't read All-Star Superman, I won't spoil the very end part of it, but once you start reading the book, you'll understand how the book's going to end up the way it does. But right here is the famous page, this page right here, where he saves the girl from jumping off a building. And he saves her by just saying very quietly, "Your doctor really did get held up, Reagan. It's never as bad as it seems. You're much stronger than you think you are. Trust me." And then they hug. And that is a pretty darn emotional scene that can affect a lot of people a lot of different ways. Speaking of always, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you're at the edge and you don't know if you're going to jump or not. I get that. I haven't felt that way myself, but this is a pretty powerfully written part of this story, and it shows Superman in a light that Grant Morrison just writes Superman brilliantly in this book. He's always a heartwarming, deep, complex, emotional character in this book, and the artwork is just remarkable. So if you haven't read All-Star Superman, you really need to get on that. This is an amazing, remarkable book, full of quiet, beautiful moments like I just showed you. And we're down to the last two. This is Batman Rebirth Deluxe by Tom King. And I'm going to try and dance around so I don't spoil it for you, because this is a fairly recently released book. I'm going to talk. Included in this book is Batman Annual 2. And you may or may not know what happens in that, so I don't want to spoil it for you. But if you've been reading Tom King's Batman at all, you know that he is having a real romance with Selina Kyle, also known as Catwoman, where they refer to each other as Bat and Cat. And Tom King is doing a good job of humanizing as much as you can Batman in the comics form. And there's a part in Annual 2 that just I'm not gonna lie to you, it gets me choked up. And it's a short story, but it is very emotional. So it's in, and I can't really tell you what's going on in it because that'll spoil it for you. But if you're interested, read the Batman story in let's see, it is Annual number 2, Batman Annual number 2. So read that story. It's the one where the Bat and Cat are together for quite a long time. And it's actually not that short. It's a big, long story and shows them throughout their relationship. Wonderful art, and Tom King just nails it. It is a great story that got me choked up. And maybe I even shed a tear. Perhaps. Which brings us to our last book, which I definitely got choked up and shed a tear at, and that's Silver Surfer, which I just reviewed recently. And it's been called, which I don't know about, Doctor Who in Space. Oh, I guess Doctor Who is in space, but the comic book version of Doctor Who, because Silver Surfer has Dawn with him, who is in always in a red polka dotted outfit, no matter where. They travel all around, discover many creatures, many planets, many dimensions, and they're together for a long time, and develop a real relationship that is deep and moving and complex and more humanizing of Silver Surfer than I've ever seen before. They get into a lot of emotional moments in this book. They deal with Dawn's family and some of the things that happened to her family while she's off flying with Silver Surfer. They deal with previous relationships of Silver Surfer. They deal with Galactus in a few different forms, which is remarkable. And the end of the book, I got choked up. Very choked up. I found it heartwarming. It didn't break my heart, but I felt it. The end of this book, where it leads, is beautifully, brilliantly written by Dan Slott and very, very well drawn by Mike Allred with colors by his wife, Laura Allred. I highly recommend this book. It was incredibly moving. The whole thing was fun, funny, and a blast, and the end was very moving. So there's 7 books plus blankets, which I just forgot to pull off my shelf, that will move you and make you feel all the feels, as they say. So thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you can. Subscribe if you can, please. And peace and love, peace and love. Thank you for watching.